Hello everyone. I'm so happy to finally be doing a follow-up video to my introduction one. Okay, I haven't been able to do so because school has been kicking my ass, you know, because education totally isn't worth it, kids. You should get out now before they make you do all that homework. Alright, so the first one is the anti-Twilighters' response to the comment made by Twilight fans that because a fantasy novel, you know, because Twilight is fantasy, it doesn't have to be realistic. I'm going to start off by saying a quote that Twilight Sex member Soar With You posted. It comes from the well-known science fiction writer Orson Scott Card. He wrote the Ender's Game series, which I very much recommend, especially Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow. Okay. Also, Meyer claims that he is one of her favorite authors, and he is also a Mormon. Alright, so in his Writer's Digest, How to Write Science Fiction and Fantasy, he says, and I quote, "In a fantasy, if magic has no limitations, the characters are omnipotent gods, anything can happen, and there's no story. There has to be strict limits on magic, because before you can tell a meaningful story, you have to hone and sharpen your understanding of the world, and that begins with the fundamental rules, the natural laws. Remember, because speculative fiction always differs from the knowable world. The reader is uncertain about what can and can't happen in the story until the writer has spelled out the rules. And you, as a writer, can't be certain of anything until you know the rules as well. If they catch you faking it and doing it so carelessly that you can easily be caught, they'll figure that the story wasn't worth much effort to you. It shouldn't be worth much effort to them either." End quote. Okay, so what Card is basically saying is that a science fiction or fantasy author has to strongly establish the universe in which the events of the story take place. They need to do this in order for an audience to suspend disbelief. This is important, the suspension of disbelief, so the audience is able to accept this alternate reality. And to create a unique type of realism. One of my members is Riot XII said, "Realism doesn't mean perfectly emulating real life. Realism means making your story believable even if it's a fantasy." There needs to be a logic and a consistency to your story. You have to create a canon and then stick to it. And Meyer fails to do this. She doesn't keep with her own rules. If she doesn't seem to buy into her own reality, how are we supposed to? Our favorite example of this is the conception of Renee MZ. Meyer says that vampires can't have kids, and that's important for understanding Rosalie's character and all. But still, Edward is able to, you know, conceive his daughter, you know, and their bodies, like Meyer says, is frozen in time. Someone has to explain that one to me, because, here's the deal. Sperm isn't stored inside of a man's body. He makes more, it gets expelled. It doesn't get stored anywhere. So if Meyer thinks that, like, sperm was somehow in his body to then be able to go into Bella, you know, in terms of biology, that's impossible. Yeah, that, you know, but really, in the series, you can tell that Meyer doesn't know a damn thing about biology. And if it's, like, supposed to be his venom, then, like, Bella would be turned into a vampire and not be able to have, like, vampire children. And I know that Meyer thinks that she's trying to be like, "Oh, I'm so clever, and, I didn't say anything about, you know, male vampires not being able to have children, you know, this This just shows me how absolutely unprofessional she is, that she ignores the own rules that she established in order to create her, you know, husband plus baby equals happy ending, you know, deal. Alright. So, consistency, which is admittedly a tricky bitch, and no work is perfect. In Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if you watch the commentary of episode What's My Line Part 1, Angel gets locked in a cage, and it was this little lock. Marty Noxon, who co-wrote the episode, said one day Angel can move mountains, the next he can't break a little bicycle lock. But honestly, this was probably at fault of the prop team, and lack of funds, because it was only Buffy's second season after all. But still, in the Buffyverse, there is inconsistency about how much sun a vampire can take before they go poof. And this is also admitted to by Noxon in the commentary. So the point I'm trying to make is real writers own up when their work is inconsistent, versus Meyer, who blames her audience for not, you know, seeing her story like she, you know, meant it to be seen or whatever bullshit. Okay, so in addition to, you know, ignoring her own rules, she doesn't establish any that make sense, because she borrows from our reality. But this is common for Western writers. You know, she said she was a fan of comic books. Comic book writers invoke science all the time to explain their superheroes and stuff. She said that vampires are supposed to have extra chromosomes. Okay, if they have a different number of chromosomes, that makes them a different species. Which, yeah. I've never read, you know, that far myself, but you can't, you know, you can't interbreed species. You know, that's impossible. I don't know if it's like trying to breed a dog and a cat, which, you know, would make nothing, or trying to breed a horse and a donkey, because they are the same genus, even though they're different species. But of course that makes a mule. Mules are sterile. You can't have, get two mules together and then make more mules. So if, like, vampires and humans are like horses and donkeys, then that would mean that Ramsey is sterile, you know. Bad news for, you know, Jacob. He can't have any kids with his wife. And this is, of course, if we're sticking with biology, but, you know, who knows. Yeah, it would have been different if, you know, she said that vampires were magic somehow. Manga artists are more likely to invoke magic. And you can buy into both. I buy into Inuyasha's feudal era as easily as I buy into Spider-Man's New York. But the rules of writing still apply. Yeah. You know, rules, logic, consistency, and yeah, that's really the important things. Yeah. I suppose that's it for the first one. I hope it, again, I'm doing these, you know, to make people think and to promote my community. Remember, it's Twilight Sucks, or it's called Do I Dazzle You, which was our, yeah, tagline or whatever. Okay, again, have a good night, good day, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. Again, auf Wiedersehen.